BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello, I'm George O'Neill, and this is the Scottish Football Podcast. All the news, views and analysis you need on Monday the 28th of July. And there's been a goal glut in Perth.
8-0 St Johnstone. It is finished Sven Sprangler completing the scoring in that game against Elgin City. We're down to 10 men early on, to be fair to them.
Some big scores on the final weekend of League Cup group stage action. We'll discuss all the big stories. And elsewhere, Russell Martin was unhappy with his players after a draw with Middlesbrough.
There's a bit of disappointment in a few people, maybe not in the team and all that stuff, but if you're disappointed, you have to show it in being more aggressive, more intense, not being downbeat and sort of letting the game pass you by a little bit.
Some tough friendly encounters then. How ready are the old firm clubs for the new league season? And are Hibs set to miss out on a much-wanted midfielder?
Go for Hibs! Triantas! It's been coming. Hibs, they've looked really threatening. Triantas wants it more and puts the Hibernian in the lead.
We'll talk the latest moves in the transfer market as the window heads towards its final month and the new league season fast approaches.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sport Scotland.
Delighted to be joined this afternoon by globe-trotting striker Cillian Sheridan and the Herald's football writer at large Stephen McGowan. Gents, I hope you're both well. Cillian, you've been in pre-season action, you were saying, just before we hit record?
Yeah, pre-season doubled up as in the League Cup campaign, so it was certainly a lot of fitness off the ball running was worked on. But league started yesterday, so we got off to a good start. And I can put that League Cup behind me for another season at least.
Stephen, any pre-season fitness work for yourself?
Only in the pub. No, I mean, I was actually at the Falkirk game yesterday. Went to Falkirk Spartans yesterday. Took in a game, enjoyed it. I liked the way they played football. So that's been as close to the action as I've come, George.
That sounds fairly wise. I'm not too dissimilar myself. We'll start with St Johnstone then, talking League Cup. They were the big winners over the weekend. 4 wins from 4 from them following relegation to the Premiership. An 8-0 win it was on Saturday over Elgin. It feels like they're laying down a bit of a marker, Stephen.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of intrigue about what happens there, obviously. I think the chairman, Adam Webb, made the decision to stick with Simo Valakari. I think even though they were relegated, they saw it as a reset, an opportunity just to go again and try and rebuild the club. And it's looking reasonably promising so far. I mean, you've got to take the standard of the opposition into account. The fact the Elgin City were down to 10 men after 7 minutes, I think it was. But 4 wins out of 4 speaks for itself, and it's looking reasonably good for the Saints.
Yeah, I think one of their big rivals going for the championship title will obviously be Ross County, who went down with them. They're out of the League Cup, sort of contrasting fortunes for them, I suppose. Cillian, having played in these tournaments, will that help or hinder County, do you think, if they're out of the League Cup? They can just focus on the league now, I suppose.
Yeah, it lets them focus more on the league. I think from the beginning of the season, they knew the pressure and they knew the expectation on them probably to come straight back up. I know the chairman, anytime they go down, he's not afraid to put his hand in his pocket and really back the team to get out of the league, which we've seen already over the summer with some of the signings they've made. So I think at the minute it's looking like it's going to be the 2 Premier League teams that are looking the strongest. I know it's early, it's still League Cup, like you're saying. Sometimes the opposition can kind of flatter you, but I'm probably in agreement with I think the St Johnstone owner said it himself about the reset. I think it probably will do them good in the long run in terms of kind of resetting and starting afresh. But I do think Ross County probably will remain favourites. I don't think clubs are really... When you're in the Championship, it's a bonus if you get a little cup run like that where you can get out, maybe get a big team or get a bit of money in the club on television or something. But at the end of the day, for those clubs, the goal is to just come straight back up. That's where your season is going to be defined as a success or not.
I suppose just leading on from what you've just said there, third tier Alloa won Group C in the League Cup. How impressive is that achievement, Stephen, and how beneficial could that be for the club as a whole?
Oh, it's very impressive. I mean, I've always been one of these yo-yo clubs, right enough. I mean, they always seem to one of these clubs that kind of go between the Championship and League One, so they never really surprise you. But yeah, I mean, if you look at it, with the exception of Ross County, most of the last 16 is going to be pretty much as you would expect. Looks like Dunfermline will probably miss out right enough, and they've thrown a few quid into this pre-season. So, yeah, really big and impressive performance from Alloa. Although I would be intrigued to see who they will get in a seeded draw, of course.
Yeah, I mean they'll be hoping for one of the big boys, I suppose, and a potential trip to one of the country's big stadia, I suppose. Elsewhere in Group C, Dundee beat Montrose. They've been one of the big talking points in these League Cup groups. Such a tricky start for Stephen Presley. A 5-0 win over Montrose on Saturday, but Stephen Presley still not particularly happy from what he said post-match, Stephen.
No, absolutely not. I mean, it's been a ropey old start for Stephen Presley. I think it was always going to be a really difficult time. I mean, I think it's been well recorded. A lot of people felt that the sacking of Tony Docherty was pretty harsh, pretty unfair. That wasn't really Stephen Presley's fault. He just came into a slightly unenviable situation where people were dubious about him from the start. And against that backdrop, the very last thing you want to do is go out the League Cup in the first couple of games. So 5 goals against Montrose will be welcome. It will help to steady the ship a little bit, but I don't think there's any question that they have an awful lot to do, because I think right now, if you were looking at the teams people would expect to struggle in that Premiership right now, I think Dundee would be one of the main picks. I think by widespread agreement, I would have thought.
Let's talk about another Premiership team who some might expect to be down there then. Falkirk eased through Group A, really. Cillian, you came up against them. Didn't have the easiest time. From what you saw playing against them, do you think they'll adapt well to the top flight, and do you think they've got a pretty good chance of staying up?
Yeah, I'm going to look stupid here now, but I'm setting myself up. But I was kind of saying before, once they went up, I did think that they would struggle. I just think I don't think they've really added enough to the squad. I know he hasn't changed much of his squad from the League One days, when as a team they're brilliant and really well coached and drilled, which I got to see up close firsthand in our game. I still think we gave away a lot of silly, easy goals. But they're a well coached, well drilled team. Every player knows exactly where the other player is going to be. It looks like sometimes it can be an easy team to play in when it's like that, where you know as soon as the ball comes into you, I know what one player is going to do because we do it 20 times a week in training, or we do it every week in games. I just would worry about the overall strength in the squad in terms of having like real, more like, I think like individual game changers rather than the collective as a team where they're really good. I just think one or two, I know that they have quality like Scott Arfield in midfield and very good attacking players, but I just feel like in that kind of moment where they just need one player to produce something, a bit of magic, outwit the setup of the team, I just feel like that might be where they could struggle.
Yeah, it's hard to gauge, I suppose, when you've got that strength has been their collective working with John McGowan for a number of seasons and a core of players. I suppose only time will tell.
I thought it was really interesting yesterday, George, just being there and watching them. You're sitting there thinking, I'd be interested with Cillian thinks about this, which, I mean, can they really afford to keep on playing the way they play? I mean, they're really quite open, aren't they? I mean, they play to John McGowan's principles. They don't look like the kind of team who are going to be able to sit in, who look inclined to sit in. So how's that going to play out in the Premiership? I think that's going to be a really interesting narrative this season.
Yeah, I feel like even when we played them, we had little, like there were half chances, but given like we're way many levels below them, teams of Premiership quality, I think will have the the experience and quality to really go and punish teams if they give up chances like that, or if they do leave themselves open and exposed.
Yeah. Well, John McGowan, I think, has been clear that he will stick to his principles. But like I said, we'll see when the league gets going next weekend. Let's move it on. Kilmarnock and Livingston both qualified from Group H. Stuart Kettlewell has worked a lot with younger players during his managerial career, and I think he's been big on wanting to bring through more young players. He certainly was keen to point that out when he was at Motherwell, the work that he's done with younger players. Ben Brannan for Kilmarnock, Stephen, he's impressed throughout this League Cup campaign. Have you seen much of him, and have you been impressed with what you have seen?
I haven't seen a lot of him personally. Funny, but there's a Kilmarnock supporter who messages me regularly who's getting really quite excited, I mean, the one thing you would say with Stuart Kettlewell is we've seen from his time at Motherwell, he's not afraid to give the younger players a chance. Seen that with Lennon Miller and a variety of others. But I saw him in the Youth Cup final, actually, Ben Brannan, but he was impressive. I think he spent some time on loan at Inverness, Caledonian Thistle. I think there's a bit of excitement there. And listen, we can't have it both ways. We are forever worried and complaining about the lack of young players coming through, particularly in the Scottish Premiership. So on one hand, you really hope he does continue his current progress. On the other hand, you're just a bit concerned when players get that publicity that, it might overwhelm them a bit. But no, he looks a real fine for Kilmarnock.
And finally, on the League Cup fixtures, at the time of recording, St Mirren are 2-1 up at Ayr United. So it looks like both of them are going through to the next round. Cillian, two teams that in the early stages have scored plenty of goals this season. You were talking earlier a bit about how these early matches can set the tone a bit and boost confidence. And I suppose goals flowing in these early games can only help, especially for forward players.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm going a bit against myself here, but I've always thought it's a little bit of a cheat when you include some of these goals in the end of season goal tallies, where players can rack up 6 or 7 goals in these group stages. Then suddenly it looks like they've had a great season. But it's the only thing it can do really is it can do more harm than good. These early group stage games, if a team, Premier League team, or probably Ayr as well, they're probably expecting to get out of these groups. So if they do, well done, you're expected to do it. If you don't, or if you're stumbling to get out, like Dundee have had a bad start in theirs, where now they're kind of fighting against that until the start of the season. So they're already starting on a back foot. Whereas I think a lot of the teams are just looking probably to just, first of all, get fitness, get players through games, get a squad gel together, and just do enough to kind of just qualify and get out of it. And then you can forget about that until the next round and focus on the league campaign starting.
Let's move it on now. We'll talk about some non-competitive action. There's always eyes on Rangers and Celtic whenever they play. We'll start with Rangers. A brilliant result for them in Europe midweek, but then a chance for some of their fringe players to get under Russell Martin's nose and impress, I suppose, against Middlesbrough on Saturday. They went 2-0 down to the Championship team, Stephen, and Russell Martin was clear afterwards, wasn't he, that he wasn't impressed with the attitude maybe of some of his players, and would you take that as a warning almost to these guys?
Yeah, look, I mean, you can't compare what happened yesterday with what's going to be awaiting them in Athens on Wednesday night, but I mean, Russell Martin was so upset with events to get sent to the stand at half time, didn't he, when Rangers were denied a penalty? I think it's a really interesting situation for him now, because I think he came to Rangers as a manager with a reputation for playing really free-flowing attacking football and sticking to his principles. And they're 2-0 up going to Athens on Wednesday, and you have to wonder, does he stick with that? Does he try to be just a little bit more pragmatic? Would that go against the way he manages? So that's going to be an interesting time. I don't think yesterday's game would have told him a great deal about his starting lineup. I think the problem for Rangers is they're a work in progress. It's still very difficult to predict what will happen this season, let alone a Wednesday night. But, the one thing they have done is they've gone in these games, particularly in places like that, and they've upset teams like Panathinaikos. They're good at hitting on the break. They're good at pressing the opposition into mistakes. So, I don't think yesterday tells you very much what was going to happen on Wednesday night, but it's going to be really fascinating to see how Russell Martin plays it.
Yeah, Cillian, it might not tell us much about Rangers and how they'll set up in Athens, but how much do players read into what managers are doing on the touchline, even in friendly matches? If you're seeing your manager fly off the handle almost and really get into these things, does that show his standards to players very early and very clearly?
Yeah, I don't think any player there should be under any other illusion of there not being standards set, or I'm sure that's the first kind of thing he'll say once he comes in the door. He'll have his standards. He probably sets them every day. I would imagine the players see him react like that every day in training if they're not up to his standards. In terms of like trying to read into what a manager's doing or acting, it generally is from the players who aren't involved in a team or who aren't playing or maybe on the bench. They're the ones who are generally second guessing what he's thinking, or maybe think, no, he's not playing me in this game because he's going to play me in the next game, or he's only playing me in this game because he doesn't want to play me in the next game, or something like that. Generally, the guys who are playing and doing well, you're not second guessing what a manager's doing. But I think it would be a big miss on his part if he hadn't been kind of setting home the standards that he expects, along with the club as well itself, which is probably has been one of their issues over the last season or two.
I suppose the one thing you take from it is, a lot of fringe men were given a chance yesterday and they didn't really take their chance. And that's what these pre-season games do, I guess. They give them an opportunity to impress. I think the only, the big bonus of Rangers has been Finlay Curtis, of course, who scored another goal yesterday and really looks like he is taking his chance. A fair play to him for that.
Yeah, we spoke earlier about young players getting more of a chance in Scottish football and this dearth of talent, supposedly. Martin picked out Josh Gentles as well after the game for praise. It's been something that managers at both Celtic and Rangers in recent years have been reluctant to do, is give players from the academy a chance. So is it refreshing to see Russell Martin throw these younger guys in? And we saw, like you said, what Findlay Curtis did when given an opportunity against Panathinaikos.
Well, they're never afraid to do it in pre-season. It's when the competitive action starts, things tend to change. And that's what's good about Finlay Curtis. He threw him in from the start, the first leg of a vital Champions League game against the second team in Greece. And you wouldn't be at all surprised if he does it again in Athens on Wednesday night. It looks like he is going to get a proper chance. As to regards to the others, Rangers, Celtic, well, the figures from previous seasons tell their own story. Whether Russell Martin will be any different, time will tell. The truth is, when it comes to Russell Martin and Rangers, we don't really know what to expect really yet because, as I said earlier, they're really a work in progress and they've still got signings to bring in.
Cillian, have you seen? How impressed were you by Findlay Curtis? You'll know as yourself coming through as a young player at a big club how difficult it can be. Did you see that performance and how impressed were you by it?
I saw his goal. Took his goal really well, and obviously he's impressed enough to warrant a start, like Stephen is saying, in such an important game. It's one thing to play young players in those pre-season friendly games and stuff where guys might get a chance because other first team guys might need a rest or something. But the fact he's started him shows he's seen something and he trusts him. And look, wouldn't have been an easy game to come into. To be very interesting for the game over in Greece. I know it'll be a very hostile atmosphere, something he definitely won't have experienced before. And that would possibly show a lot more of what he's all about as a more of his character side of his game. But then the problem is probably for young players a little bit more so at Celtic, I feel, where Celtic have almost cracked the thing of they find a way to buy in young players and then sell on for big profits, where that's the problem now. If you're a young academy player, you need to be really, really good and above the level of what Celtic could possibly buy in the best talent from different countries around the age of 20, 21 that they're looking to then sell on for whatever, like minimum 5 million, between 5 and 10 million pounds nearly every season.
That kind of feeds into my next question. I was going to open it to the floor a bit. If we look at Celtic and move across Glasgow, Brendan Rodgers has been fairly clear throughout this whole summer that he wants reinforcements. He wants more players through the door for what if he wants Celtic to kick on again, particularly in Europe. He's spoken about club signings, and when Inamura, the defenders, come in from Japan, he's talked about how he could potentially be sent out on loan because he doesn't think he's ready. And then perhaps since then he's impressed enough that he might come into the fold. But I'll open it up to both of you. Do you A, think Rodgers is right that Celtic do need these reinforcements if they're going to dominate again as such? And where in particular do you think they need to strengthen, if so?
I think last season probably proved Rodgers' case, where if you do back him, he is showing an improvement in Europe. They're more, take away the Dortmund game, they were a lot more competitive in the European games. I think everyone could see there was a real improvement. And I don't think Brendan Rodgers is the type to just be happy with that. He'll want to make an improvement and then build on that again and just keep building and keep improving. And I think he's shown he's not afraid to have a kind of a sly pop at the board in terms of the players they're bringing or how much they're backing them. And I don't think he'll change I don't think he'll back down on that either. He's got his own standards and his own expectations on what he wants to do with the club, especially in Europe. I think that's where he really wants to try and make a mark. So I can't see him letting up in terms of his demand for getting the supply of players that he needs.
I think they absolutely do need to improve the squad. Yeah, I mean, I watched the friendly last night. It was feisty. It was better in the second half, but the first half showed that I think in terms of depth, they've got a bit to go. And I think the way the Scottish Cup final ended showed that as well. We had Johnny Kenny up front. You had Greg Taylor in midfield. I mean, I think it's accepted that, Jota being injured is a loss. There was Nicholas Kuhn. So they need to go and they need to add more goals to the team. Now, I think Benjamin Nygren will probably be a good first team player. Obviously, Kieran Tierney is a bit of an upgrade in terms of the left-back position. But I still don't know if you would say for sure that Celtic are better now in terms of their squad or first team 11 than they were at the end of the season. I think they probably will add players before the end of the window. I think the frustration for supporters is how long it takes and how much kind of negotiating needs to happen for every signing to take place, because they have an awful lot of money in the bank. I don't think it would surprise people if fairly soon they were pretty close to £100 million in cash reserves, and supporters don't really see or understand why they're now going back to the £3 million kind of market again, as it appears in terms of a lot of the players have been linked with. They may wait until the end of the window, of course, because then you might get the higher value players who maybe can't get the move to the big five leagues that they're looking for. But I think there is frustration for the fans just now that things are not happening just a little more quickly and a bit more decisively.
I feel like there's a little bit of a delay in between players who are doing well and Celtic are selling for maybe 15, 20 million. The then replacement of those players, there's quite a long time in between those. Instead of, doesn't seem like there's almost like an expectation of he's doing well, there's a good chance someone comes in with an offer we have to accept. When that happens, we've got this guy to go to or that guy. And it feels like that's kind of taken a little bit longer than probably should.
On the theme of transfers, let's talk a bit about the other moves that have been linked. Stephen, I think you said the Celtic market's perhaps a bit up in the air and depends on happenings elsewhere. In Edinburgh, Hibs have been linked with a potential move for Nectar Triantis, perhaps on a permanent basis. There were reports, I think last night and this morning, that a wage rise attached to Sunderland's promotion back to the Premier League might make that deal pretty tricky. Are you aware of how confident Hibs might have been of getting him back north of the border, and how big a blow would it be to David Gray's planning if that can't happen?
I spent 90 minutes with Malky Mackay at the Hibs training ground at the end of the season, just reflecting on what was a good season for Hibs. And, we touched on one or two transfers. I didn't get the impression at that point that Hibs were hugely optimistic they could get Triantis back. I think even at that point, because of the wage issue and the fee that would be involved, and I think if you're saying now that he's had a wage bump on the back of Sunderland's success, then I would think that one possibly maybe getting a bit far away from them. But it's one of these, that's the transfer the fans have wanted all summer, isn't it? Short of maybe if they could have got Ryan Porteous back, obviously he's going to MLS, but he's the one that the fans really wanted to see coming back. And I think there'll be a lot of disappointment if we don't get him, but I think it has to be pragmatism as well, because they've spent over £1 million on a striker. And in the last 2 seasons, Hibs have made, I think, accumulated losses of about £12 million. So they can't just keep throwing money at it, much as the Gordon family have done that to quite a large degree.
Yeah, they say never fall in love with a lone player, don't they? I suppose that's evidence of it if they can't afford him. And you spoke there about Ryan Porteous and a potential move to MLS. I think it's LAFC he's been linked with over there. I suppose that would be a fantastic move for him and his family to move over to America. People talk a lot about the lifestyle over there, but for his chances of playing more for Scotland, what would that do for that? And does it harm his chances if he's not playing under Steve Clarke's nose as much?
In terms of his move, I'm extremely jealous of going to LAFC. When I saw that report, I was like, I can only imagine his face when that came through, thinking that there was a chance of it happening. I don't think it'll really affect his Scotland position. I think if Steve Clarke has shown if he's quite loyal to players, it might have been different I suppose if you look at Ryan Gould's situation, he wasn't in the squad beforehand. He was doing well over in the MLS and then finally got his way into the team. Whereas I think if he's already been in and around the squad, Steve Clarke knows what he's about. I don't think he has too much of an issue where they're playing or what level they're playing. Jack Henry, he's continued to be in the squads despite going over to Saudi. So I don't think will harm it too much. To be honest, I don't think it would be. Maybe it's just me talking, but if the chance to move to LAFC was going to tell you if you go there, there's a chance you're not going to be in my Scotland squads, I still don't think you'd turn it down. I think it's probably too good of an opportunity to turn down.
The thing with that one is as well is that I think he was really in the frame Scotland wise. He was getting a game for Steve Clarke, but I think what happened against Germany in that opening game of the Euros just killed him in terms of international football. Remember they lunged into that challenge, gave away the penalty, it was a red card, and it's just not been quite the same for him since then. So I'm with Cillian. I think if he gets a chance to go to LA, much as I'm sure he would like to play for Scotland, I don't think that can be the deciding factor.
As much as I'd love to chat transfers with you both all afternoon, I'm afraid that's all we've got time for. So many thanks to Cillian Sheridan and to Stephen McGowan. And thank you all for listening. We'll be back with new episodes of the Scottish Football Podcast bright and early every day. So remember to subscribe. And thanks again for listening. Bye for now.
For everything you need to know about your team this season, download the BBC Sport app. All the latest news, goal updates, stats and scores, and insight and analysis. Just select your club to get the biggest stories and best content at your fingertips. What a result. Download the BBC Sport app for everything you need to know about your team this season.